Hello, Peter. What's happening? I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow. So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay?
I'm so disappointed in Cameron. $20 says he's sitting in his car debating about whether or not he should go out.
Monique, this is Vicky.
I gotta get out of here. I think I'm gonna lose it.
Rick, have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
First, we have French fries.
You could become a spiritual guru on your own, but you just have to tie your shoes, and you just have to know how to eat burritos backwards.
That's not our policy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the intersection of faith, family, and filmmaking. You're listening to Fearless with Mark and Amber. Here you'll find hope, truth, and practical encouragement to stand strong in your faith and lead your family with courage in today's culture. I'm Amber Archer, and joining me is my husband, author, director, speaker, Mark Archer.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
You can learn more about us and our media ministry by visiting fearlessfeatures.org. It's also a great place to make that one-time or monthly donation if you are passionate about reaching the lost for Christ through media. Visit fearlessfeatures.org to share your support today.
I have no response to that.
I'm not arguing that with you.
Okay.
Okay, we're halfway through this adventure here in the month of February. It's time for part 3.
Wow. Wow. That's all I can say. If you are just joining us, you are definitely going to want to go back 2 episodes before you start this one to catch up. We are releasing our film Dysphoria in 4 parts through the podcast for people. It's just becoming more and more apparent, the urgency to get this information out there for people and not to be afraid of what's happening around you. We are to be light in the world, and it's time for the light to go into the world.
You can't be light in light places. We talked about this a little bit, but just to reinforce, sitting in church on Sunday where it's light, where you're sitting, that's good. We need to be there, but not...
And recharged.
You don't go to church to be light. You go to recharge the light by being fed and serving in the church in some capacity, hopefully, and then to go into the dark world and be the light and expose the deeds of wickedness. So let's see, what are we talking about in part 3 here?
Part 3, we're going to go through the communist goals because we left off last week with a cliffhanger.
Antifa.
With Antifa at the college campus.
Yes. So we're going to learn about the roots of Antifa. And, let me just back up to the 100,000 foot view here. At the core, there are only 2 worldviews. There's God's worldview rooted in Scripture, and then there's man's worldview rooted in the devil. That's it. Biblical
worldview, secular worldview.
Secular means non-biblical, means I follow Satan, and Satan specializes in making lots of versions of what is essentially the same worldview. So whether you call it occultism or Islam or Marxism or socialism or humanism, it's all denial of God, denial of Christ, denial of creation.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I was, as we were going back through and kind of watching these, and you're going to come across where really this idea of transgenderism kind of where it came from.
Yeah.
And so just looking at ideological theories and what is an ideological theory? So I think we should come back. Let's watch this and then we'll come back and really talk about those, because really these theories try to replace the truth of God's word over and over again. I mean, they literally get set up as idols.
Yep. Okay, let's watch part 3.
All right.
Transgender Day of Visibility this past year, last month, really opened my eyes to Antifa's agenda. because they made threats against all of the Christian schools in the community. This was right after the Nashville shooting at a Christian school. And there was legitimate threats being made all along the interstate corridor from Denver to where we live, with targets as Christian schools. And these were Antifa threats. And most of the schools closed out of an abundance of caution. And I realized in that moment that that's what they want. That's what Antifa wants. They want to intimidate to the point of silencing and stopping people like us, Christians, people who speak out about the transgender agenda. And if we let them intimidate us, they win. And so personally, as I get these death threats, there's no merit to them. They're empty words behind a keyboard. These are people who aim to intimidate, and I believe that they are in our face to make us act first. They have this intimidation factor of getting right in your face and provoking until you strike first. And so those of us who are being intimidated by Antifa can't react. That's what they want. If we react in any way, they win.
What in the world does Antifa have to do with transgenderism and the militant homosexual left? Actually, pretty much everything. You see, Antifa's roots go all the way back to Germany in 1932, where the communists, also known as Marxists, organized as anti-fascist action in a supposed effort to combat the Nazis. Thus their claim of being anti-fascists, or Antifa. And the reason groups like Antifa and even Black Lives Matter have aligned themselves with and essentially become the militant enforcer thugs for the homosexual transsexual movement is because it aligns with their stated goals for an eventual one world government, the New World Order, destruction of the nuclear family. In 1963, the communist goals for America were read into the U.S. congressional record by then Congressman Albert S. Herlong, a Democrat from Florida. There were 45 of them read into the record, but let me show you just a few that might ring true to what we're seeing now in our society. And I'm reading from this book, The Naked Communist, first published in 1958. How about number 17, Get Control of the Schools? Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Number 19, use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. Number 20, infiltrate the press. Number 21, gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Number 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, and motion pictures. Number 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. Number 40, discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity, and easy divorce. Of course, these come as a surprise to many because, remember number 17? They've gained control of the schools, and so we've stopped even teaching about communism and socialism in favor of the schools now openly embracing it. Note this school system in Aaron's home state of Colorado, which has now openly embraced, you guessed it, communism. Read Unmasked by Andy Ngo, a man who spent years embedded deep inside Antifa. In it, he makes it crystal clear that these people identify themselves as anarcho-communist, collective anarchists. Put simply, they believe in anarchy and communism, and that sounds lovely, doesn't it? So now we can understand why Antifa shows up when someone like Jeff Younger is invited to speak about the undermining of his parental rights by corrupt family courts and medical communities that have allowed his sons to be taken from him to be chemically and surgically mutilated. And we can also understand why the same Antifa members that harassed Erin Lee at the school board meetings have also showed up at her home. Because Marxism does not tolerate any dissent or free speech. If you dare to speak out against their protected class, you will be dealt with.
It's an international criminal conspiracy. In years to come, if democracy falls, historians are going to look back on this time in which we are now living, and are going to say, how could any free and intelligent people living in a country like America let a gang of vicious outsiders come in and take over? Well, of course, the only answer would be that most Americans didn't realize or couldn't believe until it was too late that communists are what they are.
For a long time, my husband and I struggled with to what end? Where did this come from? How did this happen? Why were we targeted? Why are they after our kids? Our little girl was assaulted, and I don't understand where it's coming from. And as we've done our research for a few years now, all roads lead back to Marxism. Our school districts, our entire education system has been infiltrated. There is this agenda to strip kids of their identity, to separate them from their parents, to, pander to how they've been told they're oppressors. And accepting these identities allows them to no longer be an oppressor. And so I understand how it's a systematic issue now, and it's much larger than me and my daughter and my family. As I talk to families all over the country who've been through this, it's happening everywhere. This is a huge issue. It's just not something a lot of people are willing to talk about.
Many of the girls have been exposed to porn. And when we say porn nowadays, we're not talking about porn that was in the back rooms of the VHS stores. We're talking one click away from hardcore, violent, deviant porn. Things that we used to really call deviant behavior have been normalized, especially in the porn industry. And so these girls, when they see this, that have no sexual experience, they all of a sudden think, that's what I'm supposed to do? That's what's expected of me? That's what I have to look forward to? No, thank you. I want no part of that. So a lot of these girls are trying to opt out of womanhood, thinking if I'm non-binary or I become a boy, then I don't have to do that.
There's absolutely no way that we could have gotten from 2015 to 2018 where we had transgender everywhere. That's 3 years. Okay? It took them almost 15 years to get gay marriage. Well, it took them 3 to 5 years to get this transgender stuff. Listen, if I told you, imagine the most totalitarian society you can imagine. Like, for me, that's like 1984. Maybe for you, that's North Korea or something horrible like this. Okay, totalitarian every way. Do you believe that society could convince a father that his son was really a girl? Now, I agree that you could definitely torture him into saying it, but could you make him really believe it? I say no. I don't think you could even torture a man into believing that. The propaganda regime is so effective in this country that a large minority of people in this country actually believe it. Something that the most totalitarian civilizations you can imagine could not have achieved. And I want you to think about how much power that gives authorities. If they can get that, if they could actually get parents to chop off the penises and testicles and breasts of their children, they can get them to do that. That is a tremendous level of social power that no society in the history of the human race has ever possessed.
Dr. Money, it's still a pretty drastic procedure, isn't it?
Well, it's a drastic procedure by your standards and mine, but for the people who are living in desperation, perhaps the best way to understand it is that it seems no more drastic to them than circumcision.
John Money was one of two people who started the transgender phenomenon, so to speak. Harry Benjamin was another. But John Money was really the one who pioneered the surgeries and the treatments and whatnot. And he worked at Johns Hopkins University, And he had been studying the phenomenon of intersex. You know, there's a very minute percentage of children who are born, and it's not clear if they're male or female. They are one or the other, but physically, you know, they're difficult to tell. And so he was studying that, and then of course he was a devotee of Alfred Kinsey, as was Harry Benjamin. And so just that his influence, they got to feeling, and especially Harry Benjamin as well, got to believe that this idea of sex and gender was really more of a fluid thing. It was more of a, you know, if you raise your gender roles, gender identity, if you raise a child as a boy, then they'll be a boy. But if you raise them as a girl, then they would be a girl, despite their bodies. And so Money conducted many experiments at Johns Hopkins University to try to prove his theory that it was basically nurture more than nature, that it wasn't, whatever you were born was not necessarily immutable, that it could be changed. And then Harry Benjamin had done that beforehand, but Money was the one who really did the experiments and the hands-on there at Johns Hopkins, because Johns Hopkins is a large and well-known research facility, so he had the wherewithal to do that. And so one of the most famous experiments that he did, and it really was an experiment, was the Reimer twins.
You are going to be riveted to this story you're about to hear. It is the ultimate in that you can't make somebody be something they're not. It is known in the medical community as the John Joan case. It is the story of a baby boy who was surgically changed into a girl after there was a botched circumcision. And for the first time in 34 years, the man who grew up as a girl is going public to share this incredible ordeal. Take a look at this. In 1965, Janet Reimer became the proud mother of identical twins. The baby boys, named Bruce and Brian, were strong, healthy, and happy.
These were twin boys who were born in Canada to, low-income parents. And they went in to get a circumcision for the both of them. Well, the one boy, it went really wrong and it damaged his genitals, so they had to be removed. And then the other, I think they decided just not to circumcise the other boy. So you had this boy who had this damage. And the parents obviously were just not knowing what to do and how are they going to deal with this with their son and all of this. They saw Dr. Money on a television program, I think a talk show type thing, and he was talking about his work. And they thought, well, maybe he can help us with what we should do with our son. And so they got hold of him, contacted him. And of course, he was very excited because here he has twins. Okay, he can test his theory out now because the twin whose genitals were damaged, he can make to look like a girl and tell his parents to raise him as a girl. And his twin brother will be raised as a boy, and then he can demonstrate his theory.
We've been stereotyped in our view of male and female behavior. I suppose primarily because it's been that way for literally centuries and probably hundreds of centuries.
So he brought the family to Johns Hopkins, and they did some further surgery on the one boy his birth name was Bruce, and they renamed him Brenda, and then they told the parents, raise him as a girl, girls' clothes, girls' hairstyles, girls' toys, etc. And the other brother as a boy. And so they did that for a while, but Bruce never, it just never took with him. He always felt uncomfortable. He wanted to do more what the boys were doing, etc. And so it wasn't working. And they would go back to see Dr. Money, periodically for checkups or whatnot. And he did various things with them to try to cement his theory and try to get them to know, okay, this one's a girl, this one's a boy. Here's what boys and girls do together. You guys try that out. And you are a girl. And I think he even had at the time there were transvestites come and talk to the little one about being a woman and whatever. And so anyway, it never gelled. He got, more and more distressed about just emotionally. And so finally his parents told him. And so then he, reverted, he then started acting the boy that he was. He took the name David, and then went on with his life. He did marry a woman and help raise her kids. Of course, he couldn't have any on his own. But both he and his brother were very damaged, very traumatized by what Dr. Money had done with them. And so both of them ended up killing themselves within months or weeks of each other because the trauma had just gotten so bad and they just could not overcome it.
I was never happy as Brenda. Never. And I'd slit my throat before I go back to that. I'd never go back to that. It didn't work because that's life. Because you're human. You're not stupid. And eventually, you wind up being who you are.
Bruce Reimer, or David as he was known in his adult life, came forward with the truth of his story when he found out through the process of being interviewed for John Colapinto's 1997 book about his life story, As Nature Made Him, that not only had John Money continued to promote his case as a success story, but that the whole of the world's medical, social, and psychological fields had been taught and sincerely believed that John Money had indeed proven his theory, and that David was living happily ever after as Brenda. He was so upset upon learning about John Money's continued lies about him and his brother that he wanted the world to know the truth. But John Money and Harry Benjamin had no interest in the world knowing the truth about David. By this point, their lies had been cemented into colleges, universities, and the medical community as scientific fact. And even to the day of his own death, John Money refused to acknowledge the complete and total fraud that he had perpetrated on the world by abusing these two boys. In As Nature Made Him, David recounted the sexual abuse that he and his brother suffered as young boys at the hands of John Money himself during their regular counseling meetings. John Money would make them both view pornography, then force both boys to strip naked in front of himself and each other, and force them to have mock sexual encounters with each other while John Money watched and took pictures. David Reimer's ultimate demise by suicide wasn't his first attempt either, as he had started to know the truth about his gender as early as age 7. He had a complete mental breakdown at age 9 and tried to overdose twice at age 18. When the Reimer's mother told John Money that David was rejecting his social transitioning to a girl, and that she and her husband thought it best to tell David the truth, John Money responded by saying, "The truth will ruin the experiment."
There is a lot of talk these days about hacking computers and email accounts and bank accounts and mobile phones, but actually we are gaining the ability to hack human beings. You can really summarize 150 years of biological research since Charles Darwin in 3 words. Organisms are algorithms. This is the big insight of the modern life sciences, that organisms, whether viruses or bananas or humans, they are really just biochemical algorithms. And we are learning how to decipher these algorithms. And once you have enough such biometric information and enough computing power, you can create algorithms that know me better than I know myself. And humans really don't know themselves very well. This is why algorithms have a real chance of getting to know ourselves better. We don't really know ourselves. To give an example, when I was 21, I finally realized that I was gay after living for several years in denial. And this is not exceptional. A lot of gay men live in denial for many years. They don't know something very important about themselves. Now imagine the situation in 10 or 20 years when an algorithm can tell any teenager exactly where he or she is on the gay-straight spectrum, and even how malleable this position is. The algorithm tracks your eye movements, your blood pressure, your brain activity, and tells you who you are.
We talk about transgenderism. That's just the next step to transhumanism. Because to them, immortality is combining man with machine. And if you don't believe me, they've published it. It's on the internet. You don't go out to conspiracy theory. Just go do your own deal. You can see what they've published. Just listen to Yuval Harari talk about it. Be like, man, that guy's creepy. It's like Soylent Green creepy. And Klaus Schwab, and it's this attempt of a one world government, an oligarchy that tells all the peons what they're supposed to do. With their 7 aspects of the World Economic Forum, you're gonna own nothing and like it. There won't be any meat, because protein and testosterone and all those things, you don't want any, just challenging humanity itself. You go through all the different things that they're doing. And America is going to no longer be a superpower. And Western ideals are going to be challenged. You know what Western ideals are? Judeo-Christian principles, because the gospel by the Reformation, in the Reformation, that entire realm of civil government came through Western Europe over to the United States. And if they can remove that, then they can, they cause man to forget who they are, created in the image of God with inalienable rights. No, you are saddles for the elite to ride on.
Rob McCoy is a catalyst of liberty. He is also co-chair of Turning Point USA Faith alongside Charlie Kirk and former mayor of Thousand Oaks, California. For the past 22 years, Rob has been the senior pastor of Godspeak Calvary Chapel of Thousand Oaks, California, and is also a passionate speaker on the topics of liberty, church in the public square, how to be a biblical citizen, and bold leadership within your community.
The first step in this transhumanism is to confuse mankind and to have them forget who they are. He created them both male and female. Now we've educated our children, you don't have a clue, you're confused. And we're gonna get you in adolescence when it's really weird. I mean, I remember for me, it was like, man, girls are just awful. Wow, she's so pretty. I mean, it happened like overnight. And you're just, wow, they're everywhere. That's adolescence. That's an intense moment, and you have to have questions. And then stepping into manhood is a mystery, and to have men explain to you what that is. But you don't have a father in the house? Good luck with that. Same with a woman. What's happening to my body? And you have a woman who's able to walk you through that in adolescence, but that's missing in the home. There's certain things a man just doesn't know. I don't know what to tell you there. Boom, they are ripe for the enemy to come in and confuse. And that's first you divide it by destruction of marriage and the family. And so now we have all this confusion over 100 different genders, and they're just preparing you to say, well, just what's the difference between combining humanity with technology? And the transhumanism side, it's all conditioning to step you into this brave new world, and it's going to be awful.
I've been thinking ever since I was born that I don't belong in this body. Oh my God.
It's all right.
It's really okay, darling. I've been reading up on it, and I think I'm trans.
Oh, sweetheart. Oh, it's all right, darling. I swear.
It really is. Now look at us. We're fine. We're completely fine, aren't we? And I know we might be a bit slow and a bit old, and this is going to be confusing for us, and we'll make a mess of it sometimes, but we love you.
We love you. We absolutely love you. We always will. I mean, we don't need to rush. We've got lots of time to talk about this.
And if it turns out that we've got a lovely son instead of a lovely daughter, then we'll be happy.
No, I'm not transsexual.
Oh,
Is that not the word now?
but you said trans.
What did we call you then?
I'm not transsexual. I'm transhuman.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, they keep changing the words. I don't know the difference.
I don't want to change sex.
No, sure. We say gender now, don't we? Sorry.
I said I'm not comfortable with my body, so I want to get rid of it. This thing, all the arms and legs and every single bit of it, I don't want to be flesh. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to escape this thing and become digital.
What do you mean?
They say one day, soon, they'll have clinics in Switzerland where you can go and you'll sign a form and they'll take your brain and download it into the cloud.
And your body?
Recycled. Into the earth.
So you want to kill yourself?
I want to live forever. As information, because that's what transhumans are, Mum. Not male or female, better. Where I'm going, there's no life or death, there's only data. I will be data.
I think the leap from transgenderism to transhumanism is much smaller than the leap from homosexuality to transgenderism, because transgenderism already implies that you're not limited by your biology, that whatever you were created to be is irrelevant. And so the leap from transgenderism to transhumanism is really a very small one. If you can transcend your biological sex, why can't you transcend your humanity itself? And so we're starting to see this already now with, they're marketing it to children as the next cool thing. You're going to upgrade yourself. They're marketing it now among the elites, especially as it's going to be a way to get rid of disease. Bill Gates did a very interesting piece in 2018 in the magazine Foreign Affairs where he talked about gene editing for good. And most of it's about agriculture and things like that. But he even gets into genetic engineering of humans. People like Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, has now been talking for years openly about putting microchips in our brains that will be able to read our thoughts. He's been talking about openly genetic engineering ourselves to improve our physical bodies. And so just like the transgenderism was marketed as something that's cool, as something that's hip, as it's the next big thing, you want to be part of the wave of modernity. So we're going to see the same thing with transhumanism.
Transhumanists look forward to a future in which Homo sapiens is superseded by a better, smarter, fitter model, humanity 2.0. Humans are in dire need of improvement. Any species that causes huge damage to our environment, can't feed itself even though it has enough food, and fights countless wars costing millions of lives must surely benefit from an intelligence upgrade. Aging could be stopped and even reversed. Enhancements could dramatically raise our IQs and make us stronger and fitter. We might even be able to leave our fragile bodies behind and upload ourselves to computers, living forever in virtual worlds.
When you get far enough down the transhumanist rabbit hole, what you realize is these people are openly saying that they think they're going to upgrade themselves into being gods. It sounds very bizarre to a Christian. What do you mean you're going to upgrade yourself to be God? But that's what they say. Yuval Noah Harari, one of the top promoters of this. He's very close with the World Economic Forum. People like Barack Obama and Angela Merkel read his books. I mean, he's a big deal. Homosexual activist, incidentally. And his latest book is Homo Deus, where he argues that we're not going to be Homo sapiens anymore. In fact, he says the human species may not exist anymore in 100 years. He says the next phase is human gods, Homo Deus. So we're going to upgrade ourselves, and instead of being creatures, we're going to become creators. And you almost think of Genesis 3. We'll be as gods, and we'll be able to know for ourselves what's right and wrong. That's where they think this is going. And of course, Yuval Noah Harari says, oh, Jesus rising from the dead, that's fake news. But what's real is upgrading ourselves and editing our genetics and implanting microchips within our skulls, and that's going to make us not just transgender, but transcending it all, transcending our very humanity. It'll give us eternal life, etc. So there's a real relationship here, I think, between the transgenderism and the transhumanism, which will be the next big thing.
Okay. So we just went through a lot of different things, learned about the communist goals, watching Antifa, and learning bits through Andy No's experience. Just how
the Reimer twins.
Yep, the Reimer twins. You know what was really sad was just looking at, you know, that was back in 2000 when that documentary with David Reimer happened, and I look and I go, and here, you know, 26 years later, here we are, and it's so overboard.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much of it happening. You know, in 2000, it wasn't as prevalent. Now, and that's why, you know, I don't know if it was the first or the second installment of this that we were talking about the bills and the Bill Track 50. You can go to billtrack50.com, just search for the word transgender. And when the first search that I did, because what this does is it looks all across the country, and any language, any bill that has a language with transgender in it shows up. There were 511 lines, which means there's 511 bills, and multiple bills in certain states. I mean, you can have multiple, you can have a dozen bills with transgender language in it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's really, really important for us to be paying attention to what's going on. But just how prevalent the issue is now. And going back to the Barna report, which kind of kicked off this series for us, realizing that the majority of churchgoers don't really understand the biblical worldview, that God has definitely said there are only two genders.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's when you learn that only 39% believe that Scripture has a definite answer to issues like transgenderism. We really need to be paying more attention, believers, to the issues at hand.
It also explains why there's such an embrace now of socialism and communism.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't read the scriptures, you don't understand. If you've not been taught the scriptures, then you don't understand that. And the ignorance of a generation where they'll say, well, the Bible doesn't say communism is bad. Communism, the word communism is a new term for a repackaged form of tyranny. Tyranny has always been around. There is always someone who wants to dominate and rule the world. It's what the Bible calls the spirit of the Antichrist. The Antichrist rises on the scene in the last days. We're in the last days. The Antichrist has not come yet, but there are many antichrists who have come along, people who have tried to fill that role of being world dominant leaders. You know, I mean, Adolf Hitler was one that you could say definitely had the spirit of Antichrist.
Well, and we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Right. So it is spiritual what's happening. This is the theme of the film that we're working on currently called Principalities, that all of this that you're seeing is because of spiritual battles. And what you just saw here in part 3, when they start talking about transhumanism, the deception is so perverse and so complete now that they are now convincing young people, and this will spread. This will spread. They are convincing people that it's wrong to want to have a family, that you're not really the gender that you are, and that you're polluting the planet. And so what you should do is let them put you in the cloud and recycle your body.
Well, I think it was interesting just watching that, and Yuval Harari from 2018 at the World Economic Forum. Well, that just happened earlier this year. He literally was just in the headlines again saying these same things, only furthering now AI. Again, here's where the transhumanism, the data comes in,
Which we'll talk about in part 4.
which we'll talk about in part 4. But there were a couple of things that I had to write down as, we started this one especially because people, when you saw John Money, you have to understand this man had a theory, and you always have to test theories, but these are all ideological. And so just to kind of go through how these theories, think of Marxism. It's a theory.
It's
Islam.
it's an ideology.
The ideological theories. Islam. It's an ideology. There are so many things that are trying to replace what God has established. And the ideological theories, they become so powerful because they offer people what only God can give. Identity, righteousness, belonging, and hope. And that's the thing. Our anchor is not in a theory or a movement or man. It's in Jesus Christ alone. Who offers salvation to those who will believe.
And just to reiterate, when we say ideology, we're talking about worldview. It's the filter that's on the lens of your life through which you view the world. And so if you have been taught that capitalism is bad, right? This is communism, this is socialism. That capitalism is bad and it's what's causing all the problems, then you start to eventually you get to the point where you believe that because that's bad, America is bad, and therefore American law enforcement is bad, therefore the American government is bad, therefore it all needs to be taken down. That's how you get to this. Yet you don't realize that the fact that you have the right to protest and use technology, right, that has been developed because of capitalism, because of free market enterprise. These things exist because of the free market capitalist system. These systems that you're using to try to dismantle the system that created it, because all they've been taught is ideology and not critical thinking skills. And so these things don't occur to them.
Or are not taught the truth.
They're just not taught the truth.
Jesus Christ is truth himself.
And so it really is, you can really wrap yourself around the spokes trying to comprehend how do they think this way. And whenever I get really agitated with this and I'm questioning, and I'll say, Lord, help me understand. Help me understand why it is, how it is that they think this way. And what he always brings to mind is it's very simple. It's called sin. It's rebellion against the Lord. It's rebellion against his created order. And it's no more complicated than that. So there you go with part 3. And I would add too, if the Reimer twin story, that book, As Nature Made Him by John Colapinto, I did reach out trying to get him to talk to us, and I couldn't get to him, right?
Is he in New York?
I think he's in New York, yeah. And from what I could tell from his social media, he seems pretty liberal. And I'm always curious, somebody who writes a book like that, because that book was written in 97, and it's very well done. And it just exposes the insanity of this and how wicked this whole thing was. And there is so much more to that story. I highly recommend that book. I don't know John Colapinto. I don't know if he knows the Lord. It doesn't change the fact that he wrote a great book that really exposes this. And same with Andy No. Andy No wrote a great book called Unmasked. I don't think Andy No knows the Lord. But he is a great journalist, and he wrote a great book that exposes Antifa, because he's very good at that. Don't be afraid of using sources that are, not published by Christian authors, right?
Well, and why? Because we're to test everything through the
Yes.
lens of Scripture.
Yeah.
Test everything against Scripture.
Yeah, because those guys, despite the fact that they are not what I would call godly men, they do expose these things better than I've seen most Christians. Because as we've talked about through this whole series, most churches and pastors and Christians ignore it, and pastors want to suppress it. We just don't talk about that. So,
well, and it gives us all something to pray for.
Yeah.
Absolutely be praying for these men to come to know the Lord.
Yeah.
It's
before it's eternally too late.
Before it's eternally too late. The Lord tells us through his word that we're without excuse. And especially these men who have researched things, and even John Money, who refused even to his death to admit the falsity that he claimed and portrayed on the world.
Yeah. I read, I think it was a meme somewhere that said that hell is where those who spent their lives on earth wanting nothing to do with God, hell is where they finally get their wish for all of eternity. And it's very sobering to think about that.
Yeah.
And so when you see these people who are just in open rebellion against the Lord and open rebellion against law and order and everything that's good and righteous, remember that is the perspective that we should have as Christians. It doesn't mean that I overlook what they're doing.
No, and we shouldn't be celebrating it.
I'm not going to celebrate it, and I'm not going to excuse what they're doing, but I'm going to look at them with at least some form of sympathy and say, but you're lost and you need to repent. However, they are bent on evil. So anyway, that's...
So we're going to wrap up next week?
Yes, that's part 3. So next week will be part 4. And in the meantime, if you want to watch the film all the way through, you can support our ministry by going to fearlessfeatures.org. You can rent or purchase the film there. Also, what's that book I wrote? Compromised. Yeah, you can buy that on Amazon. We appreciate your help with everything. All of you who are watching and supporting, and we are donor funded. So,
well, next week, part 4, the final part of this series and the completion of the film, the conclusion here, and we're going to pull back the curtain even further for you to really see more of the workings of how this is shaping out in culture.
Okay.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, friends. Thanks for listening through to the end, and be sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and share this with your family and friends. Until next time, march on, saints, and be filled with the Spirit.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.